Started my first startup in '97. The world told me I was insane.
Our goal is creating future economies that are more regenerative and sustainable.
Something didn't match up. Why hasn't this become the next big thing? And that's where we invested.
The whole purpose of achieving anything in life is measurement.
Hello, everybody. We have a very exciting session for you right now. We are sitting here currently with Bassem Ammouri. He's the director of software at Schneider Electric. Bassem, he is the director of customer software in the USA, and his focus is on developing, marketing Schneider Electric's end-to-end construction software offering by leveraging organically developed construction technology products such as Layout Fast, and by evaluating and executing acquisitions and partnerships with independent software vendors, such as UMass and RIB, which were announced in 2020. Bassem holds a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from Texas A&M University and a Master's of Business Administration from Rice University. He and his wife, Charlotte, and their dog, Philo, live in Nashville, Tennessee. So let me just tell you a little bit about this session. It's entitled Innovation Talk, Software Transformation for the Efficient Building. Energy usage in real estate and construction and the pandemic's impact on these trends. We're going to talk about how these megatrends have transformed processes used to design and construct real estate assets. And we'll also go over technology advancements to improve the design, construction, and operation of smart buildings and infrastructure. So with that, I will turn it over to you and have a wonderful session.
Super. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you all for joining this talk. I encourage you to jump into the chat and please ask your questions. I'll do my best to answer them at the end of the session if we have some time. I cannot see the chat as I'm presenting though, but please chime in and do engage. This is as collaborative as possible. So first of all, I know that we are still hopefully at the tail end of the pandemic, but I'll start off by saying I hope that everyone is safe and that your families are doing well. Wherever this may find you, I hope that you're safe and secure as the world continues to get a little bit more crazy every day, starting with the pandemic. So first, I'd love to say that Schneider Electric is extremely proud to be a gold member sponsor of this event and a close partner with Shadow Ventures. We learn a lot through this community and we're proud to be a part of it. So at Schneider, we aim to be the digital partner for sustainability and efficiency. That's our stated mission. That's our goal, is digital partner for sustainability and efficiency. And we're fascinated by the opportunity that software brings us to reach that mission. So we've reached that mission historically with products for energy management and industrial automation, and then the services around those products. And we've dabbled in connecting those products with our platform that we built called EcoStruxure. What we're really excited about and what I'll share in this presentation is the investments that we've made in getting earlier in the construction lifecycle, with investments in design software and investments in building management software, construction management software. So trying to complete the end-to-end life cycle and travel with our partners and travel with our end users and customers along the entire digital life cycle of a project from the earliest stages of design. So as Ian said, I'm Bassem Ammouri. I look after the portfolio of this investment in the acquisitions and partnerships we've made, as well as the tools that we've built internally for the United States geography. But this is a global portfolio. These are all global solutions. My specific responsibility is here in the US. So to first start with the why. So why are we here? Why are we making these investments? We know that sustainability is very quickly becoming a driver from many governments for buildings. It accounts over 40% of CO2 emissions are coming from buildings. We compare that to the fact that 13% of global GDP comes from those same buildings, or the built environment, as we call it, the process of designing and building and then operating buildings. So 13% global GDP, but 40% of global CO2. So a lot of opportunity to bring those numbers closer together, and ideally by bringing down the sustainability contribution. Recent studies in the US and Europe, we see that 90% of projects go over time and over budget. And anybody like myself who's been involved in the management of a construction project or involved in some way with that process knows probably firsthand on how inefficient those processes can be and those projects can be. And there's a cost element of that, there's a materials element of that, and there's a sustainability impact as well to all of that 30% of rework that happens on the average construction project. And then you bring in the impact, and all of that's, I guess, before the pandemic, but then you bring in the fact that now, and it's probably higher than 90% at this point, but 90% of our time is spent indoors. And on the one hand, that means that we need to get more remote and more virtual. Today, we're all coming together remotely, right? In a previous time, we may have come together in person, and hopefully we'll get to do so again in the future. But when we can't, we need to be able to come together virtually. And that's speaking to the 90% of our time being indoors. But on the other hand, with more of our time indoors and the increased demand for indoor space and functionality of that indoor space, we see a current and continued booming in the construction industry, and all the more reason to get more efficient and get more sustainable in the designing and building of those constructed assets. So over the last 40 plus years, the productivity of the construction industry has declined, especially when compared to other industries. So to be effective in the construction industry, we need to share information across the value chain. So this is true for any trade or anybody involved with a construction project. It's specifically, from Schneider's perspective, very true from the electrical trades. So we at Schneider are an electrical manufacturer. We feel this pain from an electrical standpoint. And we believe that the impacts when it has to do with electrical can be very detrimental as we get to the operation phase of a project. So the big takeaway here for us is that when you have an inefficient documentation sharing and collaboration effort in the design phase, the impacts are definitely felt during the design phase, but also, and even more so, in the operation of the building. From the earliest stage involvement by the architect producing documents which are handed over to the engineer and then handed over to the fabricator, to the GC, to the distributor, to the electrical engineer, to the electrical manufacturer, the lack of coordination and challenges with effective collaboration present barriers to the different disciplines, consequently leading to increased costs and then the waste. And those are the metrics that we saw on the previous slide. So there has been some change, and we are here. This is a technology summit. There are technologies being applied to resolve this challenge. And we're seeing them more so being adopted in other trades outside of the electrical space. The reason for that could be that it's a very highly regulated space. It's a more complex solution from a building to building perspective. But with the tie-in and with the increased focus of sustainability and Schneider's mission being sustainability, we are awakened as an electrical industry to try to come along with the advancement of digital in terms of the construction effort. So another view of the same challenge is here, and I always laugh and somewhat take this very seriously, that the construction industry has flatlined in terms of efficiency gains over the past 25 years. And you can compare it there to some of the other industries that are globally recognized, and there are 25 globally recognized industries. Construction and the built environment is number 24. And the question always comes, well, what's number 25? And it's hunting. So we are at least more efficient in terms of efficiency gains and using digital to reach those efficiency gains. We're doing better than hunting as an industry. So that's one proud point that we can have. But I think the point here is clear that there's quite a bit of upside, and that's where Schneider's coming to our mission and our investment strategy around software. So I won't read through the metrics here, but I think we can all acknowledge that there's significant waste, and significant inefficiency in the construction projects that we're all a part of. From the Schneider's perspective, the electrical side, the implications of those inefficiencies in the design can be much, much more impactful in the overall life cycle of the building. And we'll show that here in a couple slides. So when we look at sustainability specifically, we've talked about efficiency, waste, and related costs to those, but the emergence of sustainability goals have become a major topic and focus, and in turn, a priority for many governments, stakeholders, and our customers, the end users, the owners of these built assets. There's huge expectations to unravel the untapped energy savings that can be achieved in building and construction by reducing the impact in carbon emissions through the value chain of projects. The ability to address waste is becoming ever more relevant to reboot productivity and profitability of the building and infrastructure sectors. And I think the big takeaway here for me is that the building industry, the design and build phase, which is 1/4 of the 20 gigatons of CO2 emissions, and the operate and maintain phase, which is the rest, are equivalent to 29 million round-trip flights from London to Los Angeles. So major impact, especially when you put it into that perspective. But I think what's interesting is just as much or significantly, the design and build phase is contributing a big portion of those CO2s. And a big piece of the 15 gigatons on the operate side could be reduced if we had a more efficient design and build. So getting into the specific technologies that we at Schneider are proposing, and again, there are incredible amounts of technology coming available every day. We've heard some of them in this exact in this conference, in this summit. But we propose a specific portfolio, and we'll talk about why. But the major theme that you'll see from our strategy is that it is open concept. It is integratable. It is open. It's vendor agnostic. It's software agnostic. We want to improve the industry as a whole. We've placed some bets that we think are interesting, but we're always open to collaboration. And the idea is to allow our software to collaborate as well. So a bit of a history lesson. Since its invention over 60 years ago, computer-aided design has brought significant improvement, shifting from pen to paper, unlocking the power of 2D and 3D. But fundamentally, CAD has had no real impact on the construction productivity index. And that's the chart that we saw on the previous slide. And I don't think this group needs a lesson on what building information modeling is, but this is the new technology that we as Schneider are looking to embrace and engage with from an electrical standpoint. So BIM obviously enables collaboration, process efficiency, elimination of waste, increased visibility in the earlier stages of a project. And we believe wholeheartedly in the power of BIM to do this. Where we are very excited is the opportunity for electrical to be used in BIM, to use electrical simulation capabilities to integrate electrical workflows, electrical design workflows within the BIM environment. And we see three main areas where this can be made possible, or where this can be adding value. So the ability to simulate. So we talk a lot about the carbon output, the carbon offset of buildings. And there's an increased demand among owners due to the increased regulation from governments and municipalities to get smarter about our CO2. And one of the big contributors to the CO2 of a building is the electrical, the energy usage of this building. So with the electrical simulation capability being brought into the BIM workflow, we can help a designer enrich their design, get smarter about what the CO2 output of that design will be once the building's built and once the building is operating. And we're creating immense value for that design phase and also the customers of that designer. So what will my energy cost be in the normal operating state of this building? What if there is a utility outage? How will that change? What will happen to the electrical scheme? Will the microgrid that I'm designing actually do what I intended to do? So all of these types of simulations are being made possible within the BIM workflow or within a software such as ETAP, which can integrate with the Revit environment, we can integrate with Revit. So simulation is one key element. The next piece is the ability to collaborate. So just like with building information modeling and other trades, there's an opportunity within the electrical value chain, which is very fragmented, from the distributor, electrical contractor, general contractor, client, owner, owner's engineer. The opportunity to collaborate has not been seized through our manual document sharing traditional process that we're following today. So BIM enables collaboration for electrical, just as it does for other trades as well. And then eliminating waste. So waste from a material standpoint, better planning leads to less construction rework, but also eliminating waste from an energy usage standpoint. So using those simulations to predict and get smarter and use a better electrical infrastructure, a better electrical scheme to be designed and power the building. So I think many of us have seen slides, curves like this before. If we look at the different stages from design to build of a typical project, say 2 years on one axis and then cost on the y-axis, the blue line represents the traditional flow where the effort and documentation increases to the peak at the construction documentation phase. So the cost of design changes in the early stage are low, but they're very high once the construction documentation stage is reached. So the ability to control the cost in the earlier stage are high, but lower as the construction progresses. As we get more and more concrete, as more and more equipment is finalized and delivered to the site, the cost of changing is higher, right? I think everybody understands this who's working in this industry. If we look at the BIM methodology, this enables us to have the information available much earlier. That camel hump moves to the left of the slide. I think the main takeaway here is that this camel hump moving to the left is something that we're seeing in other trades, and the opportunity with electrical is to do the exact same thing and get the visibility from a construction standpoint, but also from the energy consumption standpoint. And then doing so enables us to reach an unparalleled level of untapped savings. So if we look at the full life cycle of the project to include operate and maintain enclosure, so typical projects take that 2 years to construct, but then 60 years before decommissioning. We see here that the untapped savings around electrical infrastructure come much later in the building life cycle. The untapped savings within electrical are relatively higher, larger than others, simply because of lagging adoption of BIM. So from that basic element, the untapped savings within electrical are huge because less and less electrical engineers, electrical contractors are using BIM today. So in terms of who is left to adopt BIM, the electrical space is high on that list. At a deeper level though, the untapped savings being so large later in the operation of the building is significant because of the misuse and overburdening of electrical and energy infrastructure that's happening today. So oftentimes, if we get very technical, a circuit breaker is rated on the number of trips. So thousands of trips for each circuit breaker before it's considered end of life. So the inability to simulate and plan and use that circuit breaker to the correct load might result in it tripping more often. And if it trips more often, then it loses its capability, it starts to fail, and you have to replace it. So there's a cost associated with that somewhere in that building operation lifecycle. So with enhanced simulation capabilities, with better planning, thanks to BIM and thanks to some of the other tools that we'll talk about that integrate with BIM, we can get smarter about the application of that circuit breaker. And then we can have it trip less often and survive and be used for much longer, eliminating that cost. So that's a very specific example, but it's a very important one. And if we consider that the electrical scope of a building in terms of cost is about 10 to 15%, it's a significant opportunity to decrease that savings, or to decrease that cost, increase that savings. I won't walk through the different dimensions of BIM. I think most of us are familiar there. The important one for our strategy, and I think for the industry as a whole, is the sixth dimension, the 6D BIM. So the benefits of 6D BIM from our perspective are massive. With the availability of embodied carbon data, we can begin to reduce energy consumption in the long run, thanks to more accurate decision-making related to component installation during the design process. So can you run simulations using that carbon offset information, that embodied carbon component level data? Simulations can then be run to conduct analysis and impact of a decision on an economic and an operational plane. And then when we look at 7D BIM, you can then compare the operational information, the actual real-time data, so the real-time carbon footprint of the building with the as designed. So comparing the 6D information, the simulation, with the actual operating information, the operating data of the building. So Schneider's role and other manufacturers' role here is to make that data available. So we need the software that can do it. We have the technology that can track this information, but we need the embodied carbon data to be available, to be layered in as metadata within the BIM model. And that's critical. And that's where Schneider's leading the way in terms of making that information available. And we're creating platforms and opportunities and tools that allow that information to then be shared. And then finally, before we move into the specific solution set that Schneider's proposing, BIM has evolved from the mid-1990s when architects started to work with 3D BIM, followed by structural engineers and then steel fabricators. So that's back in the earliest stages of where BIM was used. It was in the very civil, very construction heavy, physical elements of a building. Around 2010, contractors started using BIM for construction sequencing, phased and quantity management, collision avoidance. The electrical field is now awoken to BIM, as we've been sharing. It's recognized that it's far behind and has started to take big strides within what the BIM opportunity has to offer. As we've shared in a previous slide, having the electrical model integrated with the BIM model at the design stage can ensure that the building is built in a way to fully utilize smart devices and provide important information about the building's energy performance. So we'll see continued progress coming in the next few years from the electrical field, becoming more and more digitized and incorporating improved regulations and in the environment, energy standards, and then green building certifications. As those become more and more required, the adoption of BIM in the electrical space will have to follow suit because it enables that compliance. So I'd like to walk through the specific solution set that Schneider is proposing here. And we'll start with the electrical design phase. So the aim is to create a tool set of different solutions that you see there, the symbols, and we'll walk through them. The goal is to enable collaboration and efficient electrical design and simulation at the earlier stages of a project. So fundamentally, that's the aim. And we've put together here a collection of solutions that we think enable that. So in the design phase, we've built a leading platform in sustainable electrical design and simulation. The first one I'd like to talk about is called Layout Fast. So this is a tool that Schneider's built over the last 7-8 years. It started as just a plugin into the Revit solution. So you can download Layout Fast or you can access it on the web. And what it is a complete portfolio of Schneider's products in a configurator format. So you can go and build your transformer. You can go and design your switchboard and then automatically generate a dynamic BIM object to be inserted into your BIM model. So the aim there at a very simple level is to provide accurate information to that design build contractor, to that engineer who's creating the BIM model and Layout Fast, laying out the electrical room. On top of that capability, we want to enable the design and the simulation and the running the electrical study at that early stage as well. So ETAP is an acquisition that we announced in 2020. ETAP is a power simulation software that does integrate bidirectionally with Revit. So it enables the extract of that data tree into the ETAP environment. You can run your arc flash, you can run your system study, and you can pull the information and any changes that you made to the data tree back into the BIM model. So again, creating a branch, creating an opportunity for electrical work to be done in a very adjacent and integrated way to the Revit workflow. We also have a solution called C Electrical. C is a 3D panel building software. In a very similar way, it can speak back and forth with the Revit environment, and it's specifically for doing a 3D panel design. So creating the switchboard and going into the panel, whereas Layout Fast is outside of the panel, laying out space. C Electrical enables us to go inside of the panel and wire and design down to the wire. Now, we talked a lot about construction waste earlier in the presentation, and construction management is a key element to our strategy. And M2 is a software from a company called RIB software or RIB software. So RIB is an acquisition that was announced from Schneider in early 2020. And M2 is their 5D BIM construction platform enterprise solution. So it's a cloud-based collaboration solution where GCs, ECs, and any other stakeholder in the project can collaborate in a single location to create a single source of truth. It enables the estimating, the procurement, the project scheduling, and then the output of a 5D BIM that incorporates all of that commercial and construction work that was done in the 5D BIM that can then be handed over and used in the operation stage by the operator or by the owner of the building. So we put together here an electrical design solution that speaks with BIM for the design phase. M2 can then ingest that solution, enhance it, enrich it, and use it to run a efficient construction project with less waste, track your efficiency, track your sustainability metrics, and then use that information again to run and operate and maintain that constructed asset. So in the built and asset optimization piece, the operate and maintain phase, we've collected Plan On, which is a data aggregation tool for pulling all of the system data from a building. So the lighting information, the HVAC information, the power information, the people movement information can all be pulled into a single platform with Plan On and monitored. For the power side of things, ETAP can then be used for the electrical digital twin. So you've created your single line diagram with ETAP in the design phase. In the build phase, you're then using it to monitor the real-time information from the assets. So from the switchboard, from the meter, from the relay that's in that piece of equipment. And then EcoStruxure is Schneider's monitoring connected product solution. So you can connect up all of the connected products with Schneider in the EcoStruxure platform, run diagnostics, run monitoring, and do predictive maintenance. So the opportunity here that we've created is create the design, create an enriched BIM model, use that BIM model to operate a construction project, to manage a efficient construction project, and then leverage the information that you've collected along the way and apply it during the operate and maintain phase. So diving in one step deeper in each of these three phases, and I've got a couple customer examples that we'd like to share. So we have all the capabilities starting with automated specification, electrical calculations, sizing, schematics, as we've talked about. A specific use case would be that an engineer can use Revit to create the accurate building information model. The engineer can use Layout Fast plugin to create specific Schneider Electric data for that BIM model. You can then export the data tree into ETAP, as we talked about, run your study, pull it back into the BIM model, share that information with a panel builder or a fabricator with C Electrical, and then pull that information to the shop floor and run that accurate manufacturing process that's based on the real design data. So creating less rework, less duplication in these integrated solutions. One specific example where we've applied one of these BIM tools is with Singapore Sportsplex. So it's a massive sports facility in Singapore, and it was designed and simulated using our solution set. So using our BIM solution called Canico BT is able to bring the electrical simulation work inside of Revit. It achieved for Singapore Sportsplex quality and compliance to the local standards around energy consumption, time savings on the manufacturing side and the operation side, reduction of cost thanks to less rework, and it can be tailored to global markets as well. It's that replication of the work. In the build phase, so we've got M2, as we talked about. It's a 5D BIM enterprise software connecting teams, processes, and data for a better project planning, costing, real-time construction, and carbon emission monitoring. So we see from most customers that we've worked with who have used M2, we see a 20% savings throughout the project lifespan. And when we consider the 30% waste that we saw on construction projects earlier in the presentation, the ability to unlock and eliminate 20% is significant. One US-based application of Fabcon of M2 is a customer called Fabcon. So Fabcon is the largest prefabrication company, a leading prefabrication company in North America. And the challenges that Fabcon, this is a manufacturer, was facing is siloed information within their own company. So the estimating team is not working closely enough or sharing information with the procurement team or the project management team. And then on top of that, the inability to communicate clearly and collaborate with vendors of their raw materials. So pooling all of these players into a cloud-based platform with the M2 solution enabled better collaboration, visibility. The buzzword, of course, is the single source of truth, where all players can collaborate and plan together. There's no doubt on what revision of the drawing we're working to, what the schedule expectation is going to be. So miscommunication is simply removed from the equation because everybody's working in the same cloud-based environment. So Fabcon's a very exciting application of this solution in an emerging part of the buildings industry, being prefab. And then where it all comes together is in the operate and maintain phase, as we talked about with our electrical digital twin capabilities with ETAP and our our building data aggregation solution with PlanOn. And a couple of customer stories here is UMass Memorial is the largest healthcare system in Massachusetts. The medical center has over 20,000 megawatt hours of power plant operating in parallel to the electric utility, so they generate their own power on site. And the challenges they were facing were the highest energy rates nationwide in Massachusetts and in that part of the country. They're looking to decrease their energy costs while remaining redundant and remaining reliable. Of course, it's a critical power application with a healthcare facility, so downtime was not an option. So we were proud to be able to deliver ETAP as a intelligent load shedding solution and a power system management solution. So we created the ETAP single line diagram. We mapped the real assets to that single line diagram, creating an electrical digital twin that can then monitor that real-time data. And using the ILS intelligent load shedding, it was able to shut off loads that were not being used at that moment and turn those loads back on when they were needed, if that wing of the hospital was to be populated, for example. So the ability to get smarter and take more control enabled a 20% decrease in energy costs for this application. So ETAP was used in this case for the electrical digital twin. And a very similar application is one where we saw with University of Notre Dame. So University of Notre Dame came to us with a goal to achieve 20% reduction in their energy consumption. And very similarly to the previous example, EcoStruxure enabled the visibility and remote management of their campus, especially at the height of COVID-19. So just last year, when remote management was key, less and less folks were able to go on campus, be in a building at a certain time. So the visibility that EcoStruxure's building operation and power monitoring expert provided to the facility managers was very valuable. It enabled them to manage their facilities remotely, decrease their energy consumption, again, by controlling and shutting off power where it was not needed. And then through that, enable them to reach LEED certification in 14 of the buildings on their campus. So coming together now, we've talked through the design, the build, and the operate phase, and the solutions that Schneider's built for each of these. We focus mostly on smart buildings and smart infrastructure, and we have the right tool set that you see there on the left side of the screen to customize a solution for any type of customer, be it an engineer, be it a contractor, be it a end user, like the previous two examples. And then we have a very similar offering for the more industrial facilities, right? We focus more today on buildings, but the industrials, we have the Aviva partnership as well. All of this is part of the same general principle of connecting the project across all pieces of the life cycle. So getting smarter in the design phase, sharing information into the build phase, eliminating the rework that takes place and the human error that can take place, and then leveraging all the information that was collected along the way and applying it in the operate and maintain phase. The goal here is not to block out other solution providers. The goal is to build a great solution set for the electrical capabilities within the construction industry and enable our tools to communicate with other tools that might already be using or might come along the way at a later date. The effect that we hope to have is connecting the Capex and Opex divide. So most important thing is that software makes our jobs more efficient. It makes the job of a design institute, it makes the job of an end user, the job of an electrical engineer, and even the job of a manufacturer like Schneider more efficient. It makes it an easier process. There's less rework, there's less costs associated with that rework. We do this by driving adoption of solutions which can improve workflows and collaborate with one another. And through that, we're bridging the gap between the Capex teams and the Opex teams, which hopefully will drive a better industry for all of us and a more sustainable built environment for all who work in the industry and who experience the benefits of the industry, who live and spend 90% of their time inside of buildings. And the biggest message here, I mean, this is, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, Shadow Summit, Shadow Ventures is an incredible community of thought leadership. We realize that we have much to learn on this digital journey, and we invite all of you to come and reach out and please collaborate with us. We're always open to speaking with startups and providers of new technologies. We're always interested in partnering with new types of customers who have unique needs and applying the solution set that we've built to hopefully help address those needs. So together, we can accelerate the digital transformation of buildings and the entire environment. We realize that we are one piece of this journey and this evolution of the construction space. And we look forward to collaborating with others to improve the entire industry for all of us. And with that, I'll leave it on Schneider's mission. I think this is a very powerful message for me, is that our mission has been consistent for over 100 years, and the mission is consistent. However, the application is increasingly becoming more and more digital. So I thank everybody for the time. I think we came in pretty early, so there is time for questions or comments.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for this really insightful presentation. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, so it's good that we've got some time left over. And again, there's a sidebar for all the attendees on the right-hand side. Feel free to add any of your questions into the Q&A or the chat. So the first one comes from Dilip Chaudhry. He's the CEO of Walter P. Moore. You may have worked with him out in Houston, Texas. He asked, how much internal development did Schneider have to do to make these tools share data? And is that still ongoing?
Quite a bit has already happened, and it is absolutely ongoing. These are unique companies that existed long before Schneider's involvement with them. You know, ETAP is a 30-year-old company. RIB is around the same. The trick is to create a common data environment. I say the trick, that the effort is to create the common data environment where each of these front-end experiences can draw from the same common back-end. And that's where we build the portfolio of product data, of system data. And that's, again, a vendor agnostic effort. where for these to truly add value, we realized that they need to be populated with both Schneider's equipment and other vendors' equipment across all of the electrical scopes.
Great. We've got another question from Hugh Lindsay. Do you see an opportunity for BIM and related tools to help address the need to reduce embodied carbon through the design and construction process?
Yes. So that's the 6D BIM capability, where it's in the design phase, it's creating a collection of the embodied carbon data for the design. And that comes from the vendors, manufacturers making that information available so that it can then be baked into the BIM model at the design phase. And then as we go through the construction phase, tools like RIB M2 can track and quantify and sum the embodied carbon and create a pretty accurate calculation of, okay, the carbon output thus far in the construction project is X, and your goal was X. So that 6D BIM capability is key. And I think it starts with the data. The data needs to be available, and that's something that we and many other vendors are trying to make that embodied carbon information accurate and available.
Great. And it looks like KP just joined in and asked a question. There are a lot of BIM tool feature startups. Do you have a way to integrate and work with them? If not now, is that something that Schneider is looking at in the future? As you know, we've got a portfolio of startups that are working on BIM. So what kind of opportunities do you see to integrate with them?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a number of BIM solutions. We've got a partnership with Autodesk to improve the electrical workflows within Revit. But as I said at the end, we're absolutely looking to collaborate with others. We realize that there's incredible technologies. There's a lot to do in terms of BIM, especially for electrical, and we're not going to do it alone. So there are efforts today. We are in collaboration with a number of BIM startups, and we're always open to more. So yeah, absolutely.
Just to follow that up, if there was an entrepreneur that was looking to work with Schneider, what would be the best way that they could reach out? Which team, which department? Schneider's a very large company. So how do you determine which contact is best for a startup that may want to integrate and collaborate with you guys?
Yeah, I think the right spot is to come directly to me. I'd love for my information to be shared here. I think it is. Yeah, I'm looking after the software portfolio, and I'll pass the contact on to somebody much smarter than me within one of the specific tools to have the conversation. But absolutely, always open door. We have our Schneider Ventures group, who's specifically tasked with meeting with startups just like that, and developing a relationship and exploring partnership opportunities. But I can be the single point of contact to route within Schneider.
Great. Yes. And Bassem's contact information is available on his profile, and anyone can reach out to me directly if they'd like an intro. I'll be happy to help facilitate that as well. We still do have about 15 minutes. So if anybody has any additional questions, looks like there was an anonymous question similarly related to another one that was asked. How has BIM created an opportunity for building product companies to be integrated into the design and build process? And it looks like we've kind of touched on that, but if you wanted to elaborate.
Yeah, for building product companies to be integrated. Absolutely. Yeah, if you're a building product manufacturer and you don't have a BIM strategy, I think you should have a BIM strategy in the near future. As more and more design firms are adopting BIM, and it's becoming a critical output for many contractors as well, to provide a BIM model that matches what they just built. To make it easier for those firms to interact with your building products in those processes is a good use of time, right? And that's where Schneider's spent a lot of time making that BIM content available. And I think absolutely, BIM creates the place for you to interact with those potential customers who need your product data. That's where they're working. So I think the building product data needs to be there and readily available.
We've got another question. It's good. They keep coming in. So we are a large developer. We rely on our engineers for decisions. Are you working with developers so that we are better educated to manage our engineers better?
So we partner with a number of large developers. We have strategic partnerships with a number of end users. The goal is to have a developer who's not putting complete faith into the GC or into the engineer, right? Of course, they're the subject matter experts in their field, but with BIM and with a solution like M2, which is our acquisition from last year, M2 is absolutely a value proposition for the developer so that they can track and interact with the engineering firm, the EPC, the GC who's doing the work for them, and understand what's happening, track it, just gain a much higher level of visibility into the process. So rather than just throwing it over the fence and waiting and hoping and then receiving the news, you can be a little bit more involved in the process. So we are in the business of educating and delivering the value proposition to the developers and to the owners of the buildings as well.
Great. Anybody else have any questions? Feel free to add them into the chat. But again, I definitely want to thank you for spending your time today, sharing these perspectives. They've been highly valuable. I'm sure that there's going to be some great connections that come out of that as well. So again, I'll put my contact information in the chat. Happy to facilitate any introductions. And then post-event, I'll be sure to be making a one-to-one connections as well.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, KP. And thank you all for joining and being here with me. I look forward to connecting with you afterwards. Thanks.
Take care. Thank you.